Welcome to the Impact Ledger. Tuesday, 12/25. We don't track tickets. We track trade-offs. 20 minutes to allocate your capital. To allocate your capital, let's begin.
The future layer, what we're doing is we're moving from acknowledging the reality of where we are today and moving into the future. So where are we actually going from here and where are we moving? We envisioning how the data going to be used in the organization 3 years from now. We acknowledge the reality, we understand the reality. How do we move out of it? What we actually need the data to do to impact, to actually show the business that data is the right companion to work with. And one of the things that the critiques were around it is like, okay, but how do you make the decision what actually to look at? And I think that the question was constantly out there. How do you make the right trade-offs on future vision? When you have several capabilities competing against each other, how do you make the best decision on which one you bet, which one you actually putting your effort and money? Because in impact operation, one of the basic rules that we are saying, it's a capital allocation. If we're doing X, it means that either we need to decide what we are not doing or what is it actually needs to create enough for us to build it up. Looking at the future layer, the concept behind it is actually we want to create a future for the organization, the main pillar of growth, because everything happens with data. If we have the right marketing in place, we'll be able to bring users, but how do we know if it's the right users? How do we understand how they're converting well or not? How do we actually helping the marketing department to be much more efficient about what they are doing and focus their efforts on making the right decisions when it's coming to allocating the budget? The data is the main component there that's going to always help us to do it. Same thing goes to product. We're getting users into the platform, marketing doing great acquisition. It's all working great. But how product designing the next feature? What are they actually deprecating? What they need to optimize to actually increase the conversion? Again, data is the main component in there. So the capability going to say that we want to be able to steer 90% of the marketing campaigns in an automatic way. This is a great capability to imports. Now inside it, we can put different initiatives that are going to bring us into this level of capability and define it as done. And when we're talking about the data ecosystem vision board here, the future not necessarily have to be 3 years from now, but it's how do we imagining basically, or how do we envision the organization 3 years from now using data to actually move forward? And it's a dynamic thing. If you have 4 or 5 or 6 or even 10 capabilities competing against each other at the same time, how do you bring yourself to make the right decision? And here, this is where basically the impact operation comes into the picture. So we have in impact operation basically 3 main components as we see. The first one is the PCU, which is a portfolio cognitive units. This is how much we pay actually on maintaining the existing products in our portfolios. If we have 15 or 20 products, the cost of it going to be different for the team. The team is capable of handling certain amount of effort in the PCU world. And what we are saying is that we need now to optimize it to make sure that if we're bringing a new initiative, a new capability, what actually we're trading off? What are we actually killing in the existing portfolio? Or what is the space we still have to actually increase the existing portfolio based on the amount of people that we have? This is the first KPI that we're going to look at. Capability going to increase our PCU score. So by how much it's going to increase it? What is the added cognitive load that the team's going to have basically when they're looking at it? If you looking at the existing teams of how a lot of the data work is happening today, it is basically work that is accumulating. It's building up. We starting with a few dashboards, and we're adding more dashboards, and we're adding more dashboards, and we keep maintaining all of this activity. And instead of having a portfolio where we're saying, okay, this is our trade-off, these data products don't make any more sense, let's nuke them, we just keep piling up more and more information, more and more work, which actually increasing the cognitive load of the team. And at the same time, this team needs to handle a non-linear reality because they need to build, they need to innovate. At the same time, they are being asked to maintain the existing situation of the organization. And they still need to be able to make sure that the products that they innovated is actually rolling out correctly and fitting the needs of the organization. So teams that I met at least dropped at some point the the rollout process. And we're trying now with the PCU basically to understand what it means for the capability to actually add an extra unit when it's going to come as a future layer. And then the second part that we're going to look at is the FTE. So this is the full-time employee debt. What is actually it costing us today not having this specific capability? So if we're talking about the marketing campaign automation and we're talking about 90% of it, what is actually the blocker today? How much it's actually costing the team today to work on it manually? If they need to work on this data on a daily basis and they're spending between, let's say, 4 to 6 hours on manual work, and by getting this capability, we can save back this time to the organization. We're bringing back basically the cost, and the team can focus on making the decision, the steering itself, rather than the manual work. We are changing already something very big in the organization. We're bringing back money, and we're bringing back the effectiveness of the team to do other stuff or free the capacity. At the end of the day, we can make a decision and saying, okay, we don't need anymore 10 members in the marketing department because the automation is working quite in a good level. And we can actually drop it now to 6 people. They're still going to be there. They're still going to manage the system, but they still not will use the data in the right way. This is basically what the second component that's going to help us evaluate if we are able or not able to actually accomplish the capability of the future layer. And then the third part is to look at the cost of the stress index of the team itself. So how many disturbances do they have? And when we're talking about disturbances, it's basically when we're talking about unexpected incidents, support tickets, ad hoc requests, all of these things also coming into this picture, because if the team is in a high disturbance system, so 65 to 85%, which is majority of the teams that I'm meeting and working with, they won't be able to do really innovation because they're constantly being disturbed and they pulled out and they're losing the cognitive load. When they're being pulled out of innovation, they need to fix something, they're coming back. Sometimes these incidents can take days or weeks even, and the innovation is getting damaged. So we need to also evaluate, are we actually able to do this capability? Are we actually able to work on it in this situation? And if not, we need to look for different capabilities that are going to have a lower PCU. So this is where we're linking things together. So the PCU, if it's lower, and we know that right now the CDSI stress index is quite high, there is a chance for us to work on it. If we know that the stress index is low, we can take a PCU that is a little bit higher. And then we look at basically the costs of the portfolio itself, and we're evaluating if it's making sense. Now, when we're talking about the future, the idea behind it is to create a vision for the organization that help us to move from where we are today. And the contrary from data strategies, we don't just come and say, okay, we now creating a bunch of initiatives as a data strategy. We're saying this is what we need to work on. This is our focus. We throw it out there, 40 pages, 60 pages, 80 pages, and we hope for something good to come out of it, which never happened. We need to actually create a document that is light enough for us to understand where things are standing, where we want to go, where we want to be, and then start to build from there the initiatives that are going to go into the capabilities that we're going to work on. We're working in a little bit different approach than the regular data strategy. Data strategies that come and say, okay, this is the amount of initiatives. We need to do attribution model, a new attribution model for the marketing. We need to bring for the product ability to actually use user funnels and inside an easy way. And so it's going really much to the details of shopping list. And we just throw it into a data team and tell them, okay, now we all have a discussion, stakeholders alignment, we have a data strategy for 2026, go execute it. When the team arrives to the data strategy and to execute it, what happens is the non-linear is actually coming in and the disturbance starting to disturb them. So they have incidents, they have supports, they have ad hoc requests, they losing team members, they getting team members, there is a storming phase, there is a lot of things that happen that in the data strategy, usually we don't take it into consideration. If we're looking at the data reality, we cannot create a simple linear line that says we design, we develop, we deploy, and then the product basically live there until we start setting it. It does not exist in the universe of data. In data, it's actually you released, you need to constantly follow it and constantly check it. So whenever you're creating a future capability that you need to have, you need to make sure that you'll be able to actually maintain it, and you will be able to actually create the right structure for it to bring the reality of the team. If we just going to build in a vacuum and say, we believe that we can finish these 15 initiatives, we will never be able to do it. If we're talking about the future of how it's going to look like, we're committing to a capability of we're going to make sure that 90% of our campaigns are automated. This is a fixed thing to do. Now, how we're doing it within this capability, this is up to us based on the availability of people, the availability of technology, the needs, the definition of done, what actually a capability means when we're defining it as done. And we try to create something that is very helpful for the users to move forward. Even if they're not related to each other, we still need to fix it. Here we try to create a focus area. We have the focus of the capability, and we're creating from there basically the mechanism to build towards this capability. So with two main KPIs leading us. So how much actually each new initiative gonna add to the team maintenance time. So we know that the maintenance is gonna happen even a week or 2 weeks after they release the product. So we need to make sure that we actually prepare for it. So how much time actually we're saving for the organization, either for the data team that running now and doing something that is manual and we're saving them time, or it's even the business unit, which is a higher value because at the end of the day, the data team purpose, I'm not saying an enabler, but is supporting all of these business units to actually save time using data on making decisions. So the time to decision needs to lower down. And when we're talking about it, I think that this is our leading KPIs to decide which capabilities we work on, then which initiative actually getting us better with these KPIs, which one improved actually, or which one has the highest potential to improve our FTE debt. Because then when we're talking about the FTE debt, it means that we managed to save cost for the organization. We don't properly see it as a saved cost because we just return time that was invested in data QA, in shadow work, shadow dashboards that everybody has in the organization. It's about building up the entire operation of creating movement of data that is outside of the data warehouse. So it's sitting on some Excel sheet or sitting somewhere. All of it is cost, that meaning that the business unit are unable to actually do their actual work, which is to make campaigns better, to optimize the budget, to create new campaigns, to create new ideas, and so on and so on. So we need to really be able to think about what is the saving it's creating and what it's actually costing us. And we actually sit down, and it's going to take maybe 6 weeks to actually map how the organization is using data. What is the shadow work that exists in there? What is the taxes that we are paying actually on the data? Because it could be that we have a great dashboard, but it doesn't fit what the team needs anymore. And while we released it last quarter or last year, is no longer serving the new methods of work that they're having. If now they're having a work frame, and this is something that I noticed lately when I worked with a company, they changed the way that they're creating creatives. So they went basically to an AI tool. They bought license to create with it a lot of campaigns. And all of this process was not even reflected inside the data that's being generated. So for the CEO, what he looked at was, okay, there was a campaign that was running. He didn't know how many creatives were created for that. He didn't know the cost of the AI itself to generate all of these campaigns and all of this information. And while this one is not being reflected, this is it's a tax that we are paying without even knowing that we are paying it. We see a bill at the end of the day that marketing department paid X amount of money for an AI tool, but then how do you associate it for the returns? How do you associate it to the conversion? How do you explaining basically the operation? Was it actually successful or not? Or is it making sense or not? And I think that this is a lot of the things that when we're talking about the present layer that we need to acknowledge, this is the hours that we're investing in different peaks, or this is the data that is missing. And then when we're going to the future layer, we're talking about how we actually reducing these fractions for the organization. It's not any longer of which dashboard's going to drive the best results. It's actually which capability going to save as much as possible business time back to the business and reduce the time to decisions. And at the same time, not going to increase our cognitive load payment. And this is basically when we're talking about the future layer in the ecosystem vision board, a lot of the critiques were, how do we actually making the right decisions? And I think that with these two KPIs and this new perspective on looking at what is actually the users that's using the data paying as a tax to actually consume the data and work on this to basically reduce it, and understanding what it's going to cost the data team as a data team to add any new initiative or any new capabilities. And it's changing the conversation from no, because I don't want to do it, to no, because the PCU is going to be completely bonanza and we won't be able to support it any longer. And I think that this is one of the things that we need to remember when we're talking about impact operation in general. This is a trade-off system. We using the portfolio as our tool to decide what we're working on, when we're working on it, and what is actually costing us too much that we should start considering either deprecate it, rebuild it. We need to rethink the system in general in a very clearly way, which capabilities going to drive the best returns to the business. And the conversation then shifts from build X amount of initiatives from the data strategy, this is what I managed to achieve, to actually, this is the performance that I improved over the year. Return to marketing department 15 hours a week that used to go on a manual QAing of the data. I returned to the product 17 hours a week that used to go on Google Analytics, funnel exploration, because I managed to save it for them and create something that is much better for them to get the results that they needed. It's also helping us to reshape the way that we're thinking about data as an enabler into a supportive arm, or even, I want to dare and say, a growth arm, because we're changing the thinking of, okay, we just need to enable our marketing department to do automatic campaigns, into what is actually going to save the marketing department the most money or the most time. And then based on it, we work towards this goal. And this is how we actually connecting now the people, the business, and the entire operation into something that is meaningful. And thank you very much for joining. I will see you next week. Ciao, ciao.
That's the ledger for this week. 20 minutes down, clarity gained. The system remains imperfect, but the direction is now clear. We've weighed the choices, audited the pulse, and made the call. We'll be back next Tuesday at 12:25 to do it all again. Log off, allocate, and execute.